I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.
Hello and welcome to Call to Action, the go-to podcast for anyone trying to make sense of the world of marketing, advertising and beyond. In an industry that is a minefield of utter bollocks, we aim to capture our heroes and allies from the front line to have a chinwag with. It's like Pokemon Go, with the single but vital exception that it's not a short-term bandwagon of shite. It's brought to you by Gasp, and I'm Giles Edwards, co-founder and MD. Today, I've caught Paulina Tenner. Paulina is the founder of Granttree, an open culture company that pioneered an open salary scheme to help tech startups navigate the complex world of government funding, raising close to £60 million for more than 600 of them in the process. A serial entrepreneur, TEDx speaker and author by day, Paulina was once known to don a corset and turn into a burlesque dancer at night. She's recently written a book on how she applies her past burlesque experiences to her role as a business founder, entitled What the Business Leader Learned from the Stripper. Paulina says, be an absolute cunt. She, of course, means be curious, unapologetic, notorious, and trustful. We'll explain more on that later, but for now I'll say, welcome to the show, Paulina.
Hello, so good to be on the show.
We'll start with our 7 quick-fire questions, Paulina. So, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Krakow or London?
Both. I was born in Krakow, so both.
Burlesque or business?
That depends whether it's daytime or nighttime, so kind of both, yeah.
Corset or Dorset?
Oh my god. Let's say corset.
Masculine or feminine leadership?
A good wholesome blend of both.
Good stuff. Notorious or trustful?
Notorious when I have to get shit done, and trustful when I need to surrender.
And lastly, the vomit edit or the fuck up meetup?
Right now, fuck up meetup sounds like, what we need to bring into the world.
Yeah, I agree. We'll talk on that again later. So, Paulina, to kick us off, it's always nice to understand how people started off in their career. So, can you tell us what was your first job, and then also what was your first, inverted commas, proper job?
Right, so check this out. I was cleaning corporate loos in Sheffield, and I'm absolutely serious. I still remember the days when it was actually a summer job. I wanted to earn some money to come and study in the UK since I was awarded the Erasmus scholarship, and I wanted to have a little bit of money in the kitty to see me through. So I came to the UK, landed in Sheffield where my friend was based. That would have been 2006, something like that. And I ended up cleaning corporate loos, yeah.
And how come you ended up in Sheffield?
My friend was based there, so my friend was based there, so I went to visit her, and then I stayed and looked for summer jobs and rented myself a tiny box room and essentially went out there to make a little bit of money. Okay.
And do you have fond memories of Sheffield?
Yeah, particularly the loos were great.
Certainly clean.
But there's a story around that because I met a really cool girl from Malaysia cleaning those loos. We were cleaning the loos together, and I later on went to visit her in Kuala Lumpur. So we made really good friends. That was fun.
Yeah, amazing. Cool. And do you ever go back to Sheffield?
I've been recently once to give a workshop on tax credits and grants, and it was nice to see it again. After so many years.
Yeah, cool. I mean, I'm pushing you on that point mostly because I have family in Sheffield, and I'm always
do you?
interested to know what thoughts are.
It's a cool little place. I like it.
Yeah, it is. It's got a lot going for it. And then what happened after that then? So how did that evolve into more of a career? Not that that can't be a career.
I started cleaning bigger and bigger loos, and then I, and they were so big, I needed to get inside and clean them from the inside. No, my career ended up being a little bit disparate from, a little bit different from actually the cleaning and the housekeeping service I was providing at the age of whatever it was, 21. When I actually started my scholarship at UCL, I was absolutely fascinated by the bearded geeks with pints of beers, walking around meetups and talking about product market fit, which I had no idea what it meant at the time. And I just thought, isn't it amazing that those people have so much chutzpah and this positive kind of arrogance where they genuinely think they can change something in an industry, make it better. And I kind of got hooked. I really wanted to become one of those well, that didn't mean growing a beard, but I wanted to become one of those people who genuinely believe they can change something in a given industry. And I set up my first company with a business partner that was 30 years my senior, and learned quite a lot. It was one of those projects where the vision changes every couple of weeks, and we tried a lot of different business models, and there were things that I definitely learned. There were things I learned about how I didn't want to run a company as well. And at some point, I felt ready to go and create a little consultancy on my own. So yeah, that's how it all came about. And because I knew so many startups and because I was talking to so many founders, I realized that funding was a product of need, shall we say. There's always a need for more money, and particularly when it comes to equity free money from the government. So that's what I got into.
Yeah, okay. And was your so your studies at UCL, were they business related?
Not at all. Literature. Oh, I did a course in marketing as well, so tiny little bit.
Oh, okay. So not necessarily formal business trainer, but obviously you had that kind of entrepreneurial edge.
Yeah, I learned everything from the bearded geeks in meetups.
Do you still see any of the bearded geeks?
Yeah, sometimes I live in Hoxton, which is
Oh, it's full of them.
just next to Shoreditch, so it is full of them. Yeah, I see bearded geeks. I mean, a fair amount of them.
Yeah, of course. Well, they're not as they're not on the streets as much as they were in previous months, but
Yeah.
we've got lockdown to thank for that. And so how did you learn to run a startup then and advise startups? Was that just something you picked up by doing then?
Definitely, and my co-founder, who still is, was also my partner in life, had a bit more experience running teams, being a manager at Accenture. I didn't really have experience managing people or running a company, not at all. So yeah, definitely, it's something that I picked up just doing it.
Yeah, and that led you to obviously founding Grant-Tree, which you're still obviously running now.
Right now, actually, the interesting thing is both Daniel and I have stepped away a little bit. We appointed a CEO, and the company is pretty much self-managing, which is great. I still do bits and pieces of work for it, but it's fantastic that we've achieved this goal of the company being self-sustaining.
Oh, okay. And what's been key to that success then?
Well, we, as you know, we have open culture, and that's underpinned by the structure of holacracy, which is an alternative to hierarchy, and also open pay, transparent financials. So we have quite a few mechanisms in place that have allowed us over the years to let go of control and eventually arrive where we are right now. So at a place where the company can self-manage and does.
Fantastic. And then, so during that time, then when you were more actively involved in Grant-Tree, how did burlesque fit into all of that? I'm dying to know.
Yeah, burlesque was a little adventure of mine. At some point when I was really in 24/7 growing the business, incredibly busy, incredibly tired, I felt that I really needed to find a creative outlet, that probably the best, most outrageous part of me wasn't being fulfilled. So it was one day when I was walking around Piccadilly Circus, and there's this joint called Café De Paris, which for all I know is still there. and I looked in, and there was, I think, a rehearsal of a burlesque show. And on the spot, I decided I needed to become a burlesque dancer. I needed to find out how to go about it. So I emailed a few girlfriends. One of them sent me details of a school called the Chicobit. I did a few courses with them, and off I went. I was performing in quite a few clubs in London, and it was tremendous fun.
Amazing. And so how much training is involved then? Because presumably it's quite a skill to learn.
Well, pretty much anybody can show their ass to a to a crowd. It just boils down to with what
This is true.
skill and refinement you show your ass. I mean, to be serious about it, there's quite a bit of storytelling involved in burlesque. So there are two different almost branches of it. One is a glamorous burlesque, where it's all about the striptease and taking off your gloves very slowly, and the Dita Fonteese type of burlesque. And the other one, which I'm more interested in, is storytelling, kind of theatrical burlesque, where it's all about the act. It's all about the lead up to the striptease. So why do you strip? How do you make fun of yourself? It could become almost stand-up comedy or circus type of performance. So the best burlesque girls I've known have had backgrounds in different types of performing arts, and they were able to bring it into their burlesque performance. So for me, that was singing. I was singing in all of my acts live, and that was amazing. And typically I would take a song and I would completely change it about, invent a new story, and go with that.
It's funny you mentioned stand-up comedy, because my mind was already there, because I'm obsessed with stand-up comedy anyway.
Oh, that's cool.
And I've always noticed parallels with just delivering a talk or a speech, and just the art of delivering good comedy on stage.
Absolutely.
And in fact, we've sent some of our staff on workshops, stand-up comedy workshops, to try and help them kind of overcome that anxiety of presenting, but also just relaxing sufficiently to just make a bit of a fool of yourself on stage.
Totally.
So that must have been really, really amazing to do. Do you remember what it was like, your first ever performance?
Yeah, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so on it. I was perfectly prepared, but not over prepared. And I really, really managed to capture the attention of the audience. So it was one of those moments, I have had a few in my life, where I was completely in the zone, and they were just so with me. I started the act I went on stage in my perfect business suit, because it was my first ever act was a corporate dominatrix, kind of going over dead bodies of men on her way to the top, who is actually a sex slave. So what she really craves is to be dominated by somebody else. Anyway, so I had this perfect business suit, underneath which I had a costume made of chains and belts, like a submissive type of costume. But over this was a beautiful made-to-measure business suit. And I started the act by going on stage and basically staring at the audience for like 10 seconds in silence. And it was so intense. And they so got me, because they totally didn't expect that somebody would just basically stand there. And then I took off one leather glove and just like smacked it on the floor with anger. Yeah, and everybody went woo. So, and then I sat on a like makeshift sofa, because it was supposed to be the setup. The act is called Out of Office, and it's supposed to be my living room, a place I walk into when I'm back from the office. And I started singing, and it was amazing. They were so with me. And when I finished, I just felt absolute elation. I was just on top of the world. I knew I smashed it, and it was amazing.
Oh wow! I was expecting quite the opposite for your first attempt, but that's sounds like it went really well.
Yeah, it worked. It really worked. It really worked. Even talking about it, I feel so happy.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it went phenomenally well. So I'm dying to ask then. So your book, What the Business Leader Learned from the Stripper, which I
Yes.
understand will be available sometime next year.
Yes.
What made you want to write the book? And without meaning to ask such a stupid question, what is it about?
Yeah, of course. So the book marries two aspects of my personalities. So one, the businesswoman, the business girl who's very active, very interested in getting her teeth into business deals and building companies and investing in companies, which I also do. And my showgirl persona, which is fun and risque and provocative and not interested in status quo at all, and feminist and proud and all that. So the book brings them both together and talks about what what they have learned from each other, and also it explains different parts of our setup and our culture at Grantry, preceded by story. So every chapter is preceded by a story from a burlesque world, and then that is taken into a business context. So yeah, I really hope a lot of people get to enjoy it.
I've heard you say, because you kindly donated a wonderful isolated talk, so I've heard you refer to having those split lives.
Yeah.
But clearly there was overlap, and it wasn't just a case of learning. What did you learn about business from burlesque, i.e. that ability to stand up in front of a crowd and be that focus of attention when, say, pitching, for example?
Yeah.
But it went both ways, didn't it? So you took learnings from each, and they kind of fed into each other.
Absolutely. So because I was comfortable showing my ass to strangers on stage, I was also more confident in business. And because I was a capable businesswoman, I was so much more organized and goal-oriented in my burlesque career.
Amazing. And how long did your burlesque career last?
2-3 years maybe. At some point it just ran its course. I felt like, okay, I've done it, I've been there, I've done it, time for something else perhaps. But it still is, that burlesque persona is still very much involved in my business dealings. And also it's recently, over a year ago, a couple of friends mentioned I should be writing. And I've never, I've written articles, but I've never thought or planned on writing a book. But when the idea first appeared, I knew I had to bring in the burlesque girl into my writing.
How was that process of writing the book?
So you mentioned vomit edit. At first, yeah, that's what I did. So at first I wrote the so-called vomit edit, where I talked a lot about my burlesque days, about what I think on different issues, some of them quite loosely connected to business. So at first, I think it's really important as a writer to let it all rip, to let it all come out, and then it's time to edit and to actually think, okay, given the structure of the book and who it is for, and who will read it and what's useful to them, what should stay and what should go.
Yeah, no, I think I made this point to you before, that it's just such it seemingly makes the idea of writing a book so much more accessible. The vomit edit, just getting it all out, and then, as you say, editing through, rather than over. Like, I think people can be too anxious about needing to have a structure and a final correct structure in place before they put pen to paper. But of course, that's almost setting yourself up to fail, I imagine.
Yeah, some people write starting from structure, starting from, okay, so what should it look like? My business partner and my husband, when he writes his stories or articles, he very much starts with the structure. So that's also a way to go. But it can be a bit intimidating, and it can be, okay, I need to produce a final version with the first edit or the first go, which is nearly impossible. So I'm definitely the proponent of the vomit edit.
Yeah, amazing, and it's a brilliant title, but it wasn't the original title for the book. Is that right?
Yeah, the original. I really fought long and hard about calling the book "C.U.N.T in the Workplace." C.U.N.T standing, as you meant, for curious, unapologetic, notorious, and trustful. It's a framework that I invented for how to marry up the feminine and masculine side of your leadership. And that I was quite serious about calling the book that before I got some feedback from a few publishers, and I realized maybe it's not such a great idea, but I was very excited about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's as you said previously, it's a powerful word, isn't it? So what is that framework, though? What is that cunt framework?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we both, regardless of gender, have two different sides to how we lead. There's going to be the goal-oriented, structure-oriented side, which is, traditionally by tantric masters, for example, referred to as the masculine side. And then there is the side which is more about surrender, more about trusting the moment, more about tuning into what's important, more about listening to people. And that's referred to as the feminine side. Again, nothing to do with gender, just all of us have both masculine and feminine sides. And two qualities in C.U.N.T, curious and trustful, are feminine qualities, and two qualities, notorious and unapologetic, are masculine qualities. So it's when one applies the framework, one becomes a more wholesome, balanced leader. That's the idea.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So then, specifically, are these the kind of four qualities from that framework that you think enable success in terms of as a leader, as these leadership qualities?
I definitely think that they would lead one to becoming the kind of leader that the world really needs right now. So the balance of insight and tuning into people and being able to intuitively recognize things on one hand, and on the other hand, decisiveness and being action oriented. So I think that both of those, the compassion driven side and the results driven side, is what constitutes the kind of leadership that the world really needs, particularly, and will need, particularly in the post COVID reality.
Yeah, because I mean, there's quite a nice instinctive contrast between some of those words. Just the idea of being notorious, say, and that kind of relentlessness,
Yeah.
but equally being trustful. Just kind of there's that nice balance there, which I suppose why one is seen as masculine and one is seen as feminine.
Yeah, yeah.
And are these the qualities that you think have led you to succeed yourself?
I would like to think so, but I keep evolving. I keep kind of mastering those qualities. It's a kind of never-ending project. I'd like to think that at Grantry we have a nice balance in our culture between goal orientation and results-driven part of our culture, and more people-driven part, compassion-driven part, surrender-driven part. I'd like to think that we've got it more or less, but it's a balance which is not easy to hold, and it's a continuous work in progress.
Yeah, but it all feeds into having that culture. You talked about an open culture company earlier as well. Is that
Yes,
something that's encouraged then within the workplace to follow these qualities?
absolutely. I would say that the key principle of open culture is treating people as adults and really trusting them to do a great job and to do the job they've been hired to do. And it may sound like a cliche, but it has some very serious consequences, because if you really trust people, then why wouldn't you give them information to financial information of the company? Why wouldn't you let them make important decisions, including decision about their own salary? So, this very simple, by the sound of it, principle actually has quite substantial consequences for the culture and what people are encouraged and empowered to do.
Yeah, you've explained it as being quite emotionally loaded. What did you mean by that specifically?
I probably meant that instead of water cooler conversations, hush hush conversations, which people have in companies of all sorts anyway, we kind of let it rip. So we let tensions surface probably much quicker than they would normally do in a company that's more closed, that has a more closed culture. We have sessions which we call WIRN, which is what's important right now. And during these sessions, everybody is encouraged to bring up anything that they feel the company is important in the context of business. And very often people just have a little rant, complain about something. And that's absolutely fine. It's a place to vent. It's a place to talk about things that you're not necessarily happy about. And you don't have to have a solution. It's just important for things to be expressed and to be vented. So yeah, maybe it's a little bit more emotionally loaded in a sense that it brings up tensions and conflicts to the surface. But I'm pretty sure that all those tensions and conflicts are present in any company and in any team. And if you don't let them be vented, sooner or later they will kind of turn into this beast or something that's much more difficult to deal with and control.
Yeah, definitely. I can completely get that because it's much more decisive, isn't it? And I suppose your point about the water cooler conversations that, of course, happen in every organisation, regardless of size or culture. You're nipping it in the bud, really, and not
Yeah,
allowing it to fester and become something perhaps bigger and more poisonous.
yeah, totally.
And has that culture translated into the remote working arrangements that we all find ourselves following at the moment?
I would say it translated really well because our teams are used to being agile and self-managing. So, and quite a few people, because we have flexible working, and what we mean by that is that people are literally encouraged to design their schedule according to what fits their needs and what fits their energies and their also daily lives best, because all of us have a lot of our life admin to do, and particularly those of us who have kids. As long as they get things done, and people do get things done as long as they have the right environment to do that.
But that does make a lot of sense. Instinctively, I feel like it's not necessarily traditionally British. We're all very much stiff upper lip and don't like to kind of air our grievances. We'd much rather kind of wallow and write a letter from afar,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no
which
letters
isn't a
at
good thing.
Gramtree.
Yeah,
Just
no letters.
let it rip. Yeah.
Yeah, that transparency, I suppose, long term anyhow, can only be a positive. Perfect. And so tell us about the book then. So is the book now finished? Is it going to be available to pre-order at any time soon? How can we keep an eye on that?
Yes, it's going to be published next summer, but I'm likely to be able to pre-sale copies of it earlier. I'm really excited about bringing it to market. It's the first book that I've written, and yeah, I dare say I think it's quite fun. And I've got some reviews from people that it's definitely, like, for example, Sam Conniff, who wrote Be More Pirates, he really enjoyed it. Bruce Daisley, who wrote The Joy of Work, really enjoyed it as well. So I dare say that it's going to be a good one.
Fantastic. And how would you recommend our listeners, do keep an eye on that? Can they sign up to hear more?
Absolutely. If you go to paulinatenner.com, you can sign up to the waiting list. And I also have quite an active Instagram account at the Unapologetic Speaker that you can sign up to and follow me there.
Perfect. We'll link to those on this episode too. I've got a couple of listener questions, Paulina, for you.
Amazing. Let's go.
So, asking the general public for their opinion, be it on Brexit or boat names, is notoriously fraught with danger. But we've got two to put to you. So, number one is from Katie, and Katie asks, "What are your top tips for leadership in a remote working world?"
Good question. I think I would start with really trusting people to do their work, trusting them to manage their resources, and also I wrote a blog about it recently, really looking after their mental health and well-being, or helping them look after it themselves. So in a situation of a lockdown where we rarely leave our home offices and feel quite isolated, it's kind of easy to lose the right balance and lose the mental well-being. So I would say definitely boost kind of social life in your remote office. We have quite a few ways of doing that at Grantry. We have daily meetups on Zoom. We have quizzes. We have different things where people are really encouraged to speak their mind, to get in touch with colleagues, to buddy up, to really feel part of the office and part of the culture. I think that's really important in the remote working scenario.
Yeah, no, that's good advice because it is challenging. I mean, we found it challenging here,
Mm.
and your point about looking after mental health is, I mean, there's new challenges there. There's always been challenges around that, of course, but a lot of them seem to have been kind of exaggerated by the conditions we're in now.
Yeah.
Question 2 is from Rob. Rob says, on your LinkedIn profile, one of your specialities is being a human potential advocate, a term you admittedly coined up. What does this mean, and could you explain a bit more about it?
Yeah, of course. So I believe that overall on the planet, we have more than enough talent and more than enough creativity and capability to solve all sorts of civilizational crises that we're dealing with, so environmental, poverty, illnesses, COVID. And if we're able to channel all that potential in the right way, empower people in the right way, I think we've got more than enough capability globally to deal with everything that we need to be dealing with in this day and age. And that's what I mean by human potential advocate. I believe that people are incredibly wise, and I believe in people's genius and ability being in the right circumstances and encouraged and nurtured to being able to shine, every single person, if given they are in the right circumstances and they're obviously aware themselves of what that genius is able to contribute. And because of that, I also believe in startups and I invest in startups. That's why I walk the talk. If I'm a human potential advocate, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is and invest in people whose ideas I think can change the face of the planet.
That's amazing. And then with the startups, then, do you typically find they're small teams? I mean, to me, startup, I think of 1 or 2 people, but do you ever get startups where you've got a bigger kind of collective?
Yeah, of course. Granted, we deal with plenty of startups who are well funded. So some of them could be, could have as many as a few hundred employees even, and still be in the startup stage, in the pre-revenue stage sometimes. So it all depends on what they're going for. We never raised funding as Grantry, so we started with 2 people in a second bedroom, literally. But those were the days. But many people raise plenty of funding before they actually release a product.
Yeah. Okay. And that human potential that you mentioned there and explained, is that something you see at scale as well? So when you meet bigger teams of startups, that collective, as I mentioned earlier, do you see that as a collective, or is that more individual?
Both. So when talented people come together in a collective or in an organization, that intelligence or that genius gets multiplied, obviously given the right structure, the right culture, the right setup. And it's been amazing to watch how Grantry kind of got a life of its own and became a being of its own outside of my co-founders' kind of vision. And when we really gave the power away, it felt as if a new kind of being was emerged or was born into the world. And that's what it's like in any collective or any organization that's conscious and consciously wants to bring people together with their individual capabilities, but enhance what they're able to do personally by being in a talented team.
I heard a fantastic quote a couple of years ago, which was that there's not one person in the world that knows how to build a Boeing 747 aircraft, but there are 10,000 that do.
That's a good one.
And that idea of collective intelligence is really important. I'm not sure how true that is, but if I just assume for 1 second that that is true, that there's probably not one person in the world that could do it from or take it from scratch, they need to pull in that other intelligence from other people.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a particular genius in the collective as well that emerges. I've really felt it I'm part of a policy panel at the Institute of Engineering, EIT, engineering and technology. And when I participate in those big board meetings, it feels like there's an extra layer of intelligence and insight that is brought into existence when a group of really capable people get together, a group of really capable people who also respect each other and give each other an opportunity to add value.
Yeah, and you need that too, don't you? So even in a slight sidestep into our marketing role here at Gasp, you need to have other people, not just to nod along, but to challenge ideas and thoughts so that you can refine them and improve them.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. The final part of our interview, then, Paulina, is our 4 pertinent poses that we put to all of our guests. So they are: question 1, what advice would you give to your younger self?
To trust my intuition and really go for it regardless of what anybody else might think or feel.
Yeah, I think you're right there. Younger selves tend to be more full of self doubt.
Yes and no. I find I had that kind of chutzpah and probably risk taking attitude that I still do, that I still do now, but back then there's not much to lose, literally. So what I did, you asked about my first serious job, so it wasn't actually cleaning the loos, which was a job but not very not a very serious one. I pitched myself as a UK country director to a few Polish software companies that were exporting their services but not quite working with the UK market yet. And I had literally zero experience in business. And here I was pitching myself as a UK country director and saying, I can be here for you on the ground. I can manage, acquisition of new clients, etc., etc. And funnily enough, one of them said, yes, we're interested.
Wow.
So that was my first job. I pitched myself into a big corporate organization, and I actually worked with them for a year or so.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
I even managed to get some clients on the UK market, so that was funny.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, well, not so, certainly self doubt wasn't an issue for you then.
Probably not when it came to doing something crazy. My adventure spirit took over. There's always a bit of self doubt, I guess, but there was plenty of adventurousness which I had and which I still do.
And a different amount of risk, as you said yourself.
Yeah, there was literally nothing to lose. Whereas these days, with a company like Grantree over 4 million turnover, there are things to lose. So we need to consider things a little bit more carefully.
Yeah, cool. Question 2 then is: if you could banish one thing from your industry, what would it be and why?
Good question. So, when it comes to one branch of our business, which is filing research and development tax credit claims for people, so in other words, getting a proportion of what they spent on R&D back as cash. Because of what some of our competitors on the lower end of the market have done, there's a spammer attitude. So people are basically thinking of tax credits providers as spammers and time wasters, etc. I quite like to banish that, and I'd like to think that we're working on creating a better name for tax credit providers in general on the market.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Funnily enough, I think we've been approached by some tax credit providers, and you're right, there is.
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
No, but you're right. There is that. I suppose it's just a lazy perception due to perhaps, I don't know, the scale of how many approaches there might be. But it's a very fair point. Number 3: are there any books that you would recommend to our listeners?
Sure. We used what's become almost our organizational Bible, Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. If you heard about the if you heard about teal, which is a certain stage in the evolution of company consciousness, it comes from that book. So it divides the organizations that are present in the world today into a few different categories, which are color coded, and starts off with amber and red and progresses onto orange, green, and teal. Fascinating read, really. If you're looking to create a conscious company, really worth your while. Then books by Robert Keegan, so in over our heads, for example, which we use to recruit people. So we use Keegan's methodology about the different stages of consciousness in adult life, of humans in adult life. We use that to kind of determine what degree of complexity our candidates are able to handle, and therefore whether or not they should progress in our recruitment onto the next stage. So that's quite an interesting read. My book, once it's out.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. That's top of our list. No, that's good, because we've not had either of those books before. Actually, it's always interesting which books do come up time and time again, and then we get the odd episode where there's new books. So that's fantastic. And then number 4 is we always dedicate every episode to somebody, and we bestow that on our guest, who has to give their reason why. So would you kindly dedicate this episode to somebody?
First thing that came is Freddie Mercury. I had no idea where this came from, but let's do it. I think we'd like to be a rock star amongst funding consultancies, and maybe that's why it makes sense. Freddie, this one is for you, and thank you for all the amazing art that you produced when you were here with us.
Yeah, that's brilliant, actually, and that's quite a coincidence, because I was raised in a very Freddie Mercury friendly house. You probably just made my mum's day, dedicating this episode to him. So this episode is proudly dedicated to Freddie Mercury.
Yes.
And as a final call to action, then everyone listening can head over to this episode. We'll share links to everything discussed, from Paulina's fantastic book, Reinventing Organisations, in over our head. We'll stick your isolated talk in there as well, and we might even chuck in a Freddie Mercury musical tribute too. Why not?
Chuck in the song, definitely.
Okay, we'll do. Any requests?
Well, it has to be Show Must Go On, which, for those listeners who don't know, he actually recorded when he knew he had AIDS, but he hadn't told his bandmates yet. So it kind of adds an additional layer of kind of story to how meaningful that song was when he was singing it.
Yeah.
Every time I hear it, there's a little heartbreak of knowing that he knew, but his bandmates didn't know yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of meaning there. Fantastic. We will certainly add a link to that on our listing too. Brilliant. How else can people get more Paulina Tenner? Hit
me up. Invite me to your event. I speak quite a lot at technology events and conventions around Europe and beyond. So super happy to contribute to your events. Very happy to be asked about culture, very happy to be hit up about what we do at Grantry, which is providing R&D tax credit and grants to our clients, consulting services around those two. Head over to Twitter, to Twitter you can also, but Instagram, either the Unapologetic Speaker or Paulina Tenner, both are my accounts. Have a look at my website, paulinatenner.com, and stay in touch.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, we'll share links to all of those social profiles as well. So, thank you so much for joining us, Paulina. It's been a pleasure, and I've really enjoyed it.
Oh, brilliant. I'd enjoyed it too.
And finally, thank you to everybody listening. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do share it and review the pod. Keep questions and guest requests coming in. To get in touch with us, it's easy to find Gasp online. You can check out CTA Pod on Instagram or email hello@calltoaction.co.
To action, I can't get no call to action, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I try.